The rain was falling harder than it had all week. Streetlights blurred into soft halos through the wet air, and the quiet hum of the city was broken only by the hiss of passing cars. Under a dim lamp, Keanu Reeves stood still, his black coat dark with rain. He didn't move, didn't check his phone, didn't glance at his watch. He just stood there, waiting. He had been there for almost an hour, and still she hadn't come. But he didn't leave. Keanu had this way of waiting that wasn't restless. It was patient, like the world could stop spinning, and he'd still be fine just standing in the same spot. Finally, a figure appeared at the far end of the street. Ana de Armas. Her hair was wet, clinging to her face, and her steps were slow, almost unsure. From a distance, she looked like someone trying to hide her feelings, but even the rain couldn't hide the redness around her eyes. She had been crying. Keanu didn't walk toward her. He waited until she reached him as if to say, "You set your pace. I'll match it." When she finally stopped in front of him, she tried to smile. It was small, weak, and didn't reach her eyes. "You didn't have to wait," she said softly, her voice almost lost under the rain. "I know," Keanu replied. "That's why I did." Ana looked down at the ground, as if she couldn't hold his gaze. The weight of whatever had happened to her seemed too heavy to speak about. Her hands were tucked into the sleeves of her coat, her shoulders hunched. I didn't want to be alone," she whispered. Keanu nodded, no judgment in his expression. "Then you're not." They stood there for a moment, the rain washing over them. He didn't push her to talk. He didn't offer the kind of shallow comfort that comes in quick phrases. He simply stayed, his presence steady, like a lighthouse in a storm. After a while, they started walking without saying much. The streets were slick with water, their reflections stretching in thin ripples across the pavement. At one point, Anna's steps slowed again, and Keanu noticed her wiping at her eyes. "Bad day?" he asked gently. She let out a laugh that wasn't really a laugh. "Bad year." Then she stopped walking altogether, her breath shaking. "It's like every time I think I can breathe again, something else happens. I feel like I'm running out of strength." Keanu stayed silent, giving her the space to let the words fall. "And people think because I smile in interviews or show up at events I'm fine," she continued, her voice breaking. "But they don't see the nights I come home and just can't stop crying." He turned to face her fully, his eyes warm but steady. "Anna, it's okay to not be fine all the time. It's okay to fall apart. What matters is that you get back up." She shook her head, the rain dripping from her lashes. "What if I can't?" "Then you lean on someone until you can." She looked at him then, really looked, as if checking to see if he meant it. He did. They kept walking until they reached a small cafe that was still open. The warm glow from inside spilled onto the wet street. Keanu opened the door for her, and the sudden warmth of the air inside made her shiver. They sat at a corner table, ordered tea, and let the silence work for them. When the tea came, Anna wrapped her hands around the cup like she needed its heat to hold her together. She didn't talk for a long time, but eventually the words started to come. Slowly at first, then all at once. About the pressures, the expectations, the betrayals that had left scars no one could see. Keanu listened. He didn't interrupt. He didn't try to fix things. He just let her speak until her voice steadied and the trembling in her hands stopped. And when she finally looked up at him, her eyes still a little red but calmer, he smiled, not a wide smile, but one that told her she wasn't as alone as she felt. "You stayed," she said quietly. "I will," he replied. That was the first night she believed him. The rain had stopped by morning, leaving the streets shining under the soft light of an overcast sky. Anna woke late, her eyes heavy, but her heart a little lighter than it had been the night before. She remembered the quiet cafe, the steam from the tea, and Keanu's steady presence across the table. He hadn't said much, but every word he spoke had carried weight. She had gone home thinking she might not sleep at all, but the moment she closed her eyes, exhaustion pulled her into a deep, dreamless rest. But today was different. Today, she had to face the world again. Anna had an event, a press interview for her upcoming film. Normally, she could slip into her public smile and glide through it, but the past few weeks had worn her down. Still, she dressed carefully, fixing her makeup to hide the tiredness in her face. When she looked in the mirror, she looked fine, but she knew it was a mask. Before she left, her phone buzzed. A short message from Keanu. "I'll be there today, just in case." She stared at the screen for a moment, unsure whether to feel grateful or worried. She didn't want him to see her fall apart again, but part of her was relieved. When she arrived at the interview location, cameras were already waiting outside. A small crowd had gathered, fans, photographers, and people shouting questions. The moment she stepped out of the car, the flashes started. At first, it was manageable, but then the questions turned sharper. "Anna, are the rumors true? Did you break down on set? Who was with you last night?" She froze for half a second, trying to keep her expression neutral. The cameras pushed closer, their lenses only inches away. Someone's voice rose from the crowd, cruel and cutting, and before she could take a step back, a microphone was shoved near her face. And then, Keanu's voice, calm but firm. "Back up. Give her space." He stepped between her and the crowd with a presence that made people instinctively move. His black coat was still damp from the walk over, his hair a little messy, but his eyes were sharp. He didn't touch her, didn't need to, but somehow she felt safer just standing behind him. "She's here for the interview," he said evenly. "Not for this." The reporters hesitated, muttering to each other. Someone tried to push forward again, but Keanu's steady gaze stopped them. There was no anger in his face, just a kind of unshakable calm that made it clear he wasn't going anywhere. Anna felt her heart slow down. She realized she had been holding her breath. Inside the building, away from the noise, she finally spoke. "You didn't have to do that." He glanced at her, a faint smile on his lips. "I told you. Just in case." The interview itself went smoothly, at least on the surface. She answered questions, laughed at the right moments, and played the part the cameras expected. But every time her mind started to drift, she could see Keanu in the corner of the room, sitting quietly, watching. Not to judge, not to control, just to make sure she was okay. After it was over, they stepped outside again. The crowd had thinned, but there were still people lingering. This time, Keanu walked beside her, close enough that their arms brushed. "Does it get easier?" she asked suddenly. He thought for a moment before answering. "You get stronger." She looked at him, unsure if he was speaking from experience. "And if you don't?" "Then someone stands beside you until you do." They walked in silence for a while, the noise of the city fading behind them. Anna realized she didn't feel as exposed anymore. The day had started with cameras in her face, with voices pulling at every wound she was trying to hide. But it was ending with someone who didn't ask for anything in return. When they reached the corner where they would part ways, Keanu didn't say goodbye. Instead, he looked at her and said, "Call me tonight, even if you have nothing to say." And for the first time in weeks, she felt like she might. 2 days later, Anna sat in her apartment with the curtains half drawn, the soft afternoon light spilling across the floor. She had a script open in front of her, but the words on the page kept blurring. Her thoughts were elsewhere, back to a time before all of this, before the cameras, before the interviews. Her phone buzzed. Keanu again. Are you free this evening? She hesitated. Why? Thought you might like some fresh air. I'll drive. When he arrived, she noticed he didn't say where they were going. They drove quietly, the city slowly giving way to quieter streets lined with trees. The buildings grew smaller, and soon they were on a narrow road surrounded by fields. Where are we going? She finally asked. Somewhere you might need to see, he said, eyes on the road. Her chest tightened. Keanu, if this is about the past, I'm not... It's not about the past, he said softly. It's about how you feel right now. But she knew it was about the past. She could feel it. When they finally stopped, her breath caught. She knew this place, the old theater on the edge of town. It was where she had performed in her very first role, before fame, before anyone knew her name. But it was also where she had last seen someone she had loved deeply and lost. She hadn't been back since. Why here? She asked quietly, her voice almost trembling. Keanu turned to face her. Because you told me once you stopped going to the places that reminded you of what you've lost. And I think maybe those are the places you need to see the most. She shook her head, staring at the cracked building. You don't understand. Walking in there would feel like ripping open a wound I've just barely managed to cover. Then we'll just stand here, he said calmly. We don't have to go inside. We can just be here, together. She didn't know why she stayed. Maybe because leaving would feel like running away again. Maybe because his voice made it sound safe. After a long silence, she finally said, This is where I realized I wanted to act. I was scared that night, more than I've ever been. But when I stepped onto the stage, it was like the fear turned into something else, something alive. I thought I'd carry that feeling forever. Keanu's voice was quiet. What happened to it? Life happened, she said with a bitter smile. Pressure, mistakes, people I trusted who left. I stopped feeling like I was doing it for me. Now it's just noise. Keanu looked at the theater for a moment, then back at her. Maybe the noise will always be there. Maybe the point isn't to make it go away. Maybe the point is to remember what's underneath it. Her eyes stung, and she hated that they did. You make it sound so simple. Simple doesn't mean easy, he replied. They stood there for a while longer, the wind brushing past them. She thought about the girl she used to be, standing backstage with her heart in her throat, ready to step into the light. Without speaking, she walked up the steps to the front doors. They were locked, but she pressed her hand against them, closing her eyes. She wasn't sure if she was saying goodbye or letting something back in. When she came back down, Keanu didn't ask what she had felt. He just opened the car door for her. On the drive back, she realized something. She hadn't wanted to come here. She had fought it in her mind the whole way. But now, sitting beside him, she felt lighter than she had in months. Maybe facing the places she feared didn't have to break her. Maybe it could put her back together. A week later, Anna found herself walking toward another public event. A film premiere this time. She had promised the studio she would attend, and despite everything in her wanting to avoid it, she didn't want to let anyone down. Keanu had been away for a few days, shooting in another city. This time, she would be going without him. At first, she thought she'd be fine. She had been feeling stronger since that day at the old theater, like maybe the weight on her chest had started to loosen. But the moment she stepped out of the car, the noise hit her like a wall. Flashes from cameras, voices calling her name, people shouting questions she didn't want to answer. She forced her smile, the one she had practiced for years, but something in her chest tightened. As she walked down the carpet, a question cut through the noise, sharp and deliberate. Anna, is it true you walked off set crying? She froze for a fraction of a second. The cameras caught it. The air seemed to shift, sensing weakness. Another voice followed. Who comforted you? Was it Keanu? Her mind screamed at her to keep moving, but her feet stopped. For the first time, she felt the urge to turn and leave, to disappear back into the car. Her eyes darted around, half expecting to see Keanu somewhere in the crowd. But he wasn't here. And then, she remembered what he had told her. Maybe the point isn't to make the noise go away. Maybe the point is to remember what's underneath it. She took a slow breath. The noise didn't stop, but she decided not to run from it this time. She turned toward the reporters, not with a smile, but with calm. Yes, she said clearly. I cried. I'm human. I have bad days, but I'm still here, doing my work. So maybe you should ask about that instead. For a moment there was silence. The crowd seemed unsure how to react. A few reporters shifted uncomfortably, their eyes moving to the next celebrity arriving. The moment passed, and the noise moved on. Anna walked the rest of the carpet with her head a little higher. Inside the theater, she found her seat and sat down, her hands still trembling slightly from the adrenaline. She had stood her ground, something she hadn't done in a long time without someone to shield her. After the film ended, she stepped outside and felt the cool night air on her face. Her phone buzzed. It was a message from Keanu. How was it? She smiled to herself before replying. I handled it. His reply came quickly. I knew you would. It was late evening when Anna found herself sitting on the balcony of her apartment, watching the city lights flicker against the dark sky. The premiere had been 2 nights ago, but the moment she stood her ground on the carpet kept replaying in her mind. It had felt different. Not perfect. Not easy. But real. Her phone buzzed again. Keanu, are you awake? Yes. Want to take a walk? 20 minutes later, they were walking through a quiet park, the pathways lit by warm yellow lamps. The air was cool and the faint rustle of leaves filled the spaces between their steps. Keanu didn't talk much at first. He let her set the pace, just as he always did. Eventually, they found a bench near a small pond, its surface reflecting the moonlight in broken ripples. They sat down, both looking out over the water. After a long silence, Keanu spoke softly. You've been carrying something heavy for a long time. Anna stared at the water, her throat tightening. I've been carrying a lot of things. One in particular, he said, not as a question, but as a quiet truth. She hesitated, her fingers twisting in her lap. She had never talked about it, not in interviews, not with friends, not even with family. But something about the way he sat there, steady and patient, made her feel like maybe she could. I lost someone, she said finally. Years ago, before my career really started. He was the one person who believed in me before anyone else did. And one day, he was just gone. No goodbye, no warning. And I kept telling myself I had to move forward. But I think I never really did. Her voice cracked, and she pressed her lips together. I built everything after that. Every role, every step in my career. But it was all on top of a hole I never filled. And whenever things get hard, it's like that hole opens up again. Keanu didn't respond right away. He let the words hang there, letting her hear them out loud for the first time. When he finally spoke, his voice was low. I know what that feels like. She looked at him then, surprised. I lost someone too, he said. And for a long time I thought the only way to survive was to shut everything away, to stop letting people close enough to leave a mark. But the thing is, closing yourself off doesn't stop the hurt. It just stops you from finding something worth holding on to again. Anna swallowed hard. So what did you do? He met her eyes. I decided that even if I couldn't erase the pain, I could still choose to be here for the people who needed it. Because sometimes, showing up for someone else is the only way to remind yourself you're still alive. She felt a tear slide down her cheek, but she didn't wipe it away. Is that why you've been here for me? He gave a faint smile. Partly, but also because I think you're stronger than you believe. And I want to be there the moment you realize it too. They sat in silence for a long time after that, the night air wrapping around them. And for the first time in years, Anna felt like the hole inside her wasn't just empty space anymore. It was slowly being filled with something steady, something warm. A month had passed since that night in the park. The days that followed weren't magically easy. Anna still had moments where the weight tried to pull her back down. But something inside her had shifted. She wasn't avoiding the pain anymore. She was facing it, piece by piece. It was a bright Saturday afternoon when Keanu texted her. "There's somewhere I want to take you." She smiled as she typed back, "You and your surprises." He picked her up just after noon, driving without saying much about where they were headed. They left the city behind, the buildings giving way to wide open roads. After an hour, they pulled up to a quiet beach. The tide was low and the sand stretched out in soft, golden curves. "Thought you could use some air," he said simply. They walked along the shoreline, the waves brushing against their shoes. For a while they didn't talk, just listened to the rhythm of the water. Finally, Keanu stopped and turned to face her. "You've been fighting to hold yourself together for so long that you forgot what it feels like to just be. So today, that's all we're going to do. No cameras, no noise, just you." Anna laughed softly. "Just me? I'm not sure I even remember who that is." "Then we'll find her," he said. He picked up a flat stone and skipped it across the water. It danced twice before sinking. Anna tried next, but her throw sent the stone splashing forward without skipping at all. They both laughed, really laughed, and for a moment, she felt like the heaviness wasn't there. They kept walking until they reached a spot where the sand was warm and dry. Keanu sat down, leaning back on his hands, and she joined him. The ocean stretched endlessly before them, the horizon a soft blur of blue and gold. "You know," she said after a while, "for the first time in a long time, I don't feel like I'm pretending." He glanced at her, a small smile tugging at his lips. "That's because you're not." She looked out at the water, letting the sun warm her face. Then she felt it, an unforced smile rising from somewhere deep inside. Not for the press, not for an audience, not to hide pain. Just hers. Keanu didn't say anything, but she caught him watching her. He gave the smallest nod as if to say, "There it is." "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what?" "For waiting until I got here." He shook his head gently. "You were always going to get here. I just didn't want you to walk alone." The wind lifted her hair, the sound of the waves filling the silence between them. She knew there would still be hard days, but she also knew she wasn't the same woman she had been when they first met under that rain-soaked streetlight. She had faced the noise, the past, the loss. And now, she was standing in the light, not because someone pulled her there, but because she had chosen to step into it. Keanu stood and offered his hand. She took it, not because she needed to, but because she wanted to. Together they walked back along the shore, the sun slowly dipping toward the horizon. And this time, she didn't just feel like she could breathe, she felt like she could fly.